So that's a tiny bit about me. And we'll, Fran, would you like to tell us a little bit about you?
Yes, and I'd like to say congratulations on your string of books and your recent. You've had 2 books out this year, haven't you?
I have, yes,
Yeah,
very busy, very
yeah, very
busy.
prolific. Really, really good. Well, I don't have quite so many books out, but I'm on the road. I'll get there. I've been writing for about 25 years or so. I started off writing for publications, writing articles and features. I wrote quite a lot for TES, which used to be called the Times Educational Supplement, which is the national newspaper for teachers. That's because I was a teacher. So I was writing for a while. I had a column for a few years in that. So I was writing about education, but from a humorous point of view, because generally that's the way my writing seems to come out. And then I first published, self-published my first book, which I'll just show you. And that was called Being Miss. And again, that was about teaching. That is a story about a day in the life of a teacher, a newbie teacher, which I was at the time, but I was 40. So I trained quite late after a career in the NHS as a medical secretary. And I wrote that book about a day in a scared teacher's life. And then I carried on writing my articles, features. I've had some short stories published and poems published. And then last year, just as lockdown hit, my book, Miss, What Does Incomprehensible Mean?
I love that title.
Was published by SPCK Publishing. And rather than just about a day in the life of a teacher, that one is a whole year. So it's written in diary form and it charts a whole year in a typical life. Typical year in my life as a teacher. So that one's technically memoir. Some of the characters and settings and events have been juggled a little bit just to protect the guilty. But it's a memoir and that's been doing really well. I've really got some good reviews for that on Goodreads and on the place with begins with A. And yeah, really pleased with how that's going. And currently I'm just finishing up a novel which I'm going to start submitting to all the agents and publishers who are going to then fight over me, and you'll be hearing about that in the newspapers.
Yeah, absolutely. That's exactly what's going to happen, Fran. Absolutely.
So that's me.
It's a very scary time going out on submission, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Checking your email about 3 million billion times a day and trying not to be paranoid.
Yes, and it's that whole, okay, is it good that they haven't emailed me? Actually, is it really bad that they haven't emailed me? Maybe they didn't get it.
Yeah, absolutely.
All those things. So what made you write a whole book? What made you, rather than continue with your column, what made you think, actually, I'm going to write a whole?
I think when I wrote Being Miss, which is the first book, that's a novella really, but I knew nothing about writing at the time. I didn't really know anything about how to write a novel or well, you can see that I didn't know how to write a novel because I wrote a novella and didn't realize that no one would publish it when it was only 35,000 words. You don't know these things, do you, Bella, at the beginning? No. Nobody tells you.
No.
So I decided,
we're here for any questions. If anybody's aspiring writer, if you've got any questions, then do fire away.
I'm sure we've both learned a few things along the way.
Absolutely.
But really, you don't know these things. So I wrote what I thought was a whole book, and it turned out to be half a book. Some publishers said they really liked it. It was really funny, but no way. I think one said, imagine what it'd be like on a shelf. No one would see it because it's too thin. Oh, yes. That's just a practical thing, isn't it? But yeah, you don't think of those things. So I published that myself. And that's fine. That's absolutely fine. So the second one, the one that's just come out, Miss, What Does Incomprehensible Mean? That is a whole book.
Yay!
I made it to 65,000 words, I think. So what about you, Bella? What set you on novel writing? But did you do short story writing before that or anything?
No, I really struggle with short stories. So I get asked to do those for magazines and I really struggle. I'd rather write a 100,000 word novel. I find that easier. It's no, I mean, people that do short stories, I take my hat off to them, because I think they do, excuse me, an incredible job, because to get a whole story or a snapshot of something in characterization in just maybe 1,500 words or 2,000 words, I think is a real skill, and a really underrated skill, because usually magazines don't want to pay you for those, and that will have taken an awful lot of effort to produce those. So no, don't do short stories, to answer that question. But I'd always written, so I loved writing at school and just carried on and didn't really think much about it. It's just something I did as a hobby. And then a chance meeting with a life coach at work, she hit on the writing and just said, you should be doing this. Look how animated you get when you talk about it. I said, but I'm a mum now, I don't really have time. She said, you're a project manager, make time.
Yeah.
So she basically then spent next few months bullying me. She called it coaching, but bullied me into doing something about it. So she said, what could you do? So I was like, well, I could maybe see if there's a local course. She said, well, do that. So I joined a local course. So she said, what else could you do? I said, I don't know. See if there's organisations. She said, well, do that. So I investigated the Romantic Novelists Association. I joined on their new writers scheme, and they were absolutely brilliant. So I'd definitely recommend to any new writers, find your tribe. So whether that's Scooby for children's writing, or the Crime Writers Association for crime and thriller writers, find who they are, because they have gatherings with wine and people, and that's lovely, because you spend a lot of time in your writing cave, so to actually interact with them. And they do really useful things as well, like conferences, and that's how I found an editor, and I found an agent, and away we went, really. But the challenge was to see if I could complete a whole novel. So I had this really horrible habit of because I was just doing it for fun, I'd start writing a story, and then I get a shiny new idea. I go, oh, shiny new idea, I like that better. I will stop that one, I'll write the new shiny idea. And I get so far into that, and I go, oh, new shiny idea. And so I had lots of part finished things. So she said, pick one and see if you can finish a whole novel.
She sounds great. She sounds almost like she was acting as a mentor.
Yeah, she was brilliant. So she's so her name's Leslie Elder. I think she still does do some life coaching, but she was absolutely brilliant. And how it came about was people in my team went for sessions with her, because she'd come into the company and was doing these life coaching sessions. And my team kept going, oh, she's amazing. But I also lost 2 members of my team because she was so good. So one went off to join another company, and because she wanted to have like a self-sufficiency life. So the suggestion was, well, rather than being a, what's the phrase, a small fish in a big pond, go to a smaller company. And so that's what she did. And she now has her garden with her chickens, and so that all works out very well. And another guy who was really quiet went off contracting. It's like, wow, I don't think that's what the company intended when they sent people to be a life coach. But anyway, it worked out very well for the people involved, and very well for me, because I then went on to do something with it. And now I do a job that I absolutely love, which
that's fantastic. I really agree with you with what you say about finding your tribe. Have you ever been on any Arvon courses?
No.
Okay. I when I first started writing, I think we were on benefits at the time, and Arvon gave some bursaries if you were on benefits. So because they're normally quite expensive courses, and I went on one of those, and the special thing about Arvon, I'm not doing an advert for them here, I'm just telling you. The special thing about Arvon is that the 2 writers who run the course live in the house with you. So it's not just that you're going to their workshops, but they live with you, they eat with you, they mill around with you, when people are having coffee. And so there's that real sense that there's not a divide between them and us, as there often is on writing courses.
Who were your tutors?
Oh gosh, I did about 3 or 4 Arvon courses in the end. The first one I did was Helen Dunmore. The novelist. She died, didn't she? Far too young. Helen Dunmore, and on that same course, Bernardine Evaristo, who wrote Girl, Woman, Other. And she had, fabulous. This shows you, this is just after the Tudor times, Bella, because she had just published her first book. So that shows you how long ago that was. But going back to what we were saying about a tribe, that was the first time I think I realized there are other people in this world who don't mind me talking about writing.
People that understand about the voices in your head and that it's completely normal. Because a lot of people don't think it's normal, and we don't need too many of those people.
No, and you can see people's eyes glaze over, as mine would if someone tried to talk to me about lead piping or how to grout a kitchen tile. My eyes would probably glaze over. And I think that's why it is important to find your group, find people who love to talk about writing and love to talk about what you're passionate about.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it is really nice, and it'll be when we can get back to live events. That's something I'm looking forward to, is catching up with.
Yeah,
and they're so supportive as well, because they're the only people that understand what it's like, and they know even when you get to the point of being published, that's just a whole new cycle you have to get your head around, which is the PR and the social media and all that side of it, and actually selling books, because it's one thing to get it published, it's another thing for the thing to sell.
Yes, everything that isn't the writing. And I mean, the thing that I'm learning is that everything that isn't the writing stops the writing.
Yes, it's a tricky balancing act. And also when you're under contract, so it's great when you do your first book, you've got all the time in the world and you can just take as long as you'd like to do it. I'll go back and I'll retweak that chapter again, because it doesn't matter. But then when you're on a contract, I mean, I'm very lazy, so I generally do one book a year. I've got 2 at the moment, but I generally only do 1 book a year. Whereas I have friends who do 2 or 3 or more, and I'm not entirely sure how they do that, because even on 1 book a year, I find I'm writing one or drafting one, I'm editing another, and I'm promoting another one. So it's usually you've got 3 that you're juggling anyway in different stages. And often when you're doing promo, you're going, okay, so I wrote this book, 2 years ago? And because that's just how it works. So
do you find that sometimes that means you have to do a quick revision of your book before you go on of certain books? If you've got 2 or 3 going on at the same time, how do you remember who's in which one?
Well, so it depends, but I do generally just hop on. I do a bio, so I'm a huge planner, obsessive, somebody might say. So I go do bios for my characters. So that's actually really useful to jump on and look at the bios I've done, because I put things in there around who I think they look like. Because if you get asked questions like, say, who would you cast in a film? Then it's good for me to go, okay, which book was that? Okay, who was I thinking? Right, yes. And so that's quite helpful, because otherwise your brain is going, right, hang on, which characters and what do they look like? So it can be a bit. We've got a question from Karen.
I was just going to say, shall we?
Asking a question.
Shall I read it out?
Yeah, go for it.
I just got a rejection for my novella submission today. Luckily at 51, I can cope with it. Well done. And have self-published anyway. It was lovely feedback, so I'm taking the positives. I've had 25 factual books published, but fiction is much harder. Now writing my novel. Any tips on getting an agent? Well, Karen, I haven't done that yet, so I'm going to give you straight to Bella.
So I think it's important you look at the right agent for you. And I think the danger is that you think, I need an agent, so therefore you're just going to look and go, okay, there's an agent, they'll do. So maybe try and find one that's going to be a good fit for you and what you're writing. So, and I'm going to say something now that's going to contradict itself, but I'd say if you find someone that, for example, if you're writing children's, then you want someone that already publishes children's authors, so they understand that market, they know that, and they know what they're looking for. Equally, so obviously my agent has a lot of romance. But on the flip side of that, they're not going to want too many that are similar, because you're almost in competition with each other. So they're not going to want a whole raft of romance authors on their books. They want to have a mix of things. So it's kind of a double-edged sword, but generally you want to go with somebody. So have you ever looking back in the back of books that are in the same genre? They'll probably thank their agent. So that's always a good place to have a look. And the Writers and Artists Yearbook is the Bible, really, that has lots of information about all the agents that are out there. And again, that should have a little bit in there. And their websites now obviously have lots of information about what they're looking for. Also, I think Twitter's a great place to find them, because often an agent will put on there and say, I'm currently looking for, because that's kind of how it works, is editors that will, they'll meet with them and they'll chat and they'll say, oh, I'm looking for a World War II spin on whatever, and they might go, oh yeah, I've got that, or actually no, I haven't got that. So it's that's a good place to look. I found mine by entering a competition. So I entered a competition, and through that I found my agent. So because I was shortlisted, I then went off and went, I've been shortlisted for for a competition, and that was a great in to agents, and I got some some nice feedback as well, which is always good.
So what happened there, Bella? Did an agent get in touch with you and say, I've seen what you've said about being shortlisted, or are they keeping an eye on the shortlists? How does that work?
I went out and said, I've been shortlisted for this, would you like to read my novel? So
okay.
I had, I think I've had about 3 or 4, but I had a conversation with who became my agent eventually, and she said something that I found really, really helpful. She said, whoever you decide to go with, she said, remember they work for you. So I thought, oh, that's good, because you have that little sort of desperation stage of like, oh, please take me, please take me. So I thought, yeah, that's really good. And that was one of the things that made me warm to her. And she said, I'm here for your career and whatever you want to write. And I thought, that's good as well. So if you're thinking about any other genres or anything, then which is good.
I think, what we were saying earlier about things that no one tells you, what you've just said, Bella, I'm only just learning that I've been looking at the agency websites and seeing which agents are available. And I didn't realize that they would give you such specific information about the kind of books that they love themselves. I didn't realize that it was okay to follow an agent on Twitter. No one was going to think you were stalking, that they actually really are looking for material that they really love.
Yeah.
And that they have their own preferences. Because I think the whole thing about agents, they can seem quite faceless, and they're not at all. They're real people.
They are.
This is amazing.
Yeah.
But they have their preferences, and they really are looking for people to publish or to recommend to publishers.
Yeah, absolutely. They are that go-between. And going back to the associations, often they have events where industry professionals are there, so including agents and editors. So that's a really good opportunity, because you may just find that you're just chatting to somebody over a glass of wine and then realise you go, oh, and what do you write? And they go, oh, no, I'm an agent.
And you try not to look nervous, destabilised by that. I think also I found Auntie Google quite helpful, really, in when I was looking for agents, which I have been recently, and starting to make my little list of victims. So there are quite a few lists on the internet, like 25 top literary agents, etc., etc. So there are people out there curating lists of agents for people to look at. But I was surprised actually how many, when I clicked on, they're saying that they're not accepting submissions at the moment. So I don't know if you agree, Bella, but this thing about the submission window seems to be quite popular now, that there's only maybe a couple of months, they are off, they ask for submissions, and then they close that down for a while they read 3,000 manuscripts. Is that something that's changed since you started publishing?
I think I know lockdowns had an impact, because a lot of people had a lot of time on their hands and went, oh, I know what I'll do, I'll write a book. And I'm sure within those people that did that, there's probably some fantastic pieces of work. There's also a lot of people that maybe shouldn't have done that, and have then gone, there's my book, and sent it off to agents. So yes,
or maybe should have written it but not sent it off so quickly. Yeah. I think that's often the case, isn't it? That's what
absolutely. So I know there's a lot of people wading through a lot more than they would generally have had. So that's probably a little bit of an issue. I love my agent, and I'm always going to say I think an agent's a great thing, because she's really good and she's really savvy around the whole business. Whereas whilst obviously this is what I do and it's my job, I still very much enjoy it and see it as a great fun thing to do. Whereas she's very serious about it. So let's give a little example. We were at an awards dinner, and she went, as we were taking seats, she went, like, swap places with me, sit next to Kim. So I was like, right, so Kim Young is a very senior editor at HarperCollins. I went, why? She went, so you can ask her about her new puppy. I went, oh, right, great, okay. She went, no, so you can network. Oh, right, I see.
I would have taken the puppy thing totally seriously as well.
Absolutely. I was like, I thought, oh, yeah, I do want to know about her new puppy. That's great. And I was like, no, because she's always in business mode, whereas I really am not. So So yeah, they're very good for that. But lots of publishers have open submissions. And again, like you say, they're windows. So they'll open them and they'll close them for a while. And that's always, and they do find some great people like that. So they are going through those and they are looking at them, but they're only going to be looking at those first couple of pages. And that's what needs to grab them. So if you're sending out to those, and so just anybody watching and aspiring writers, or not yet published, you'll get there, not yet published, then you really need to make sure that those first couple of pages grab the editor. They've really got to pull them in.
Do you think, in your experience, that an editor will read the submission before they read a synopsis or a query letter? Because those are the three things that you normally have to submit, aren't they? Your sort of query letter, the submission itself, and then some kind of synopsis is what's normally asked for. Do you have any experience of what people tend to read first?
I think it depends on the individual. So I've heard different things. I know some people that go, I don't read the synopsis until I've read the opening chapters, and other people that do scan the synopsis and then read it. So I think it's a personal choice for you.
Karen's replied to us here. She says her submission was rejected because it wasn't right for them. I think they were too literary fiction for my book, but they said it was well written and engaging. And Karen, I know just from my experience in writing to agents, if they say anything about your work, that is much better than just the standard rejection, because the standard rejection often says nothing at all other than it wasn't right for us. But I think even if you get a sentence like it was well written and engaging, that what they mean is keep going, Absolutely. We saw something. So I think you should find that really encouraging. The ones I've had, like that, what will happen if that's on a shelf, no one will see it, wasn't quite so encouraging. But still, it gave me a way forward. And I think that's the thing. Every rejection that you have gives you something to go forward with. So Bella, I was going to ask you whether because you've been writing for a while and you've published quite a lot, what would you say to yourself when you first published your novel? If you could go back in time, your first novel, what advice would you give to yourself as a new writer that you wish you'd known?
I think I didn't realise how well that first novel did. So that was number 15 in the Amazon chart. And now if you break the top 100, that's incredibly good.
Yeah, well done.
For a few hours. Yeah, so I just didn't know. So, it would be nice to have appreciated it more rather than going, oh, that's all right then, isn't it? Without really realizing. And also that it went into Tesco's and
wow.
I just didn't know any different. I didn't know different. So obviously now you're further down the line, then you're waiting to hear if it's into supermarkets, and you're like going, oh, please.
Do you think it was? I mean, do you think there's something about being naive that's almost more preferable, that you don't know these things necessarily, or do you put a lot of store on them now that you wouldn't have done before, like getting into a supermarket, for instance?
There's a lot less pressure. Because I think you're trying to make sure that the current book meets the expectations of your editors and your publishers, because if it doesn't, they won't be asking you for another contract. So it all kind of hinges on the next book. So there's more to lose, I guess, and also you don't want to let people down. So I kind of liken writing to being a Formula One driver, because that makes me sound exciting. But so you've got this huge team around you. You've got all the engineers, the people that design the car, all those, and there's just one person that drives it, and the focus becomes on them. But actually, there's so many people that make that Formula One experience happen. And it's the same with a book. You've got somebody doing the cover, you've got your copy editor, you've got your editor that takes you all the way through, you've got the PR team, the marketing team. There's so many people. You're just the person who wrote it. And they all have to come together to make that package and make that package work. So I think as a team, you want to succeed, and you want that book to do well for everybody, rather than not just
I agree with that. And I think that takes me back to something that I think I've learned, or am learning, is not to be so precious about my work. this idea that you're saying about there's a team. I found this when I was working with my publisher for the incomprehensible book, as I've now learned to call it, because the title is too long. So my incomprehensible book that I wrote, I just didn't realize that there would be so much investment from the publishers to want to make it as good as it could be. I mean, that makes sense, doesn't it? Because commercially, they're the ones, they want to earn some money from it. They want it to be a good book. But that sense of having to work with them and sometimes make some compromises and sometimes get your way, I think it really helped me to think of writing a book as a team, because it's like there are people behind you then supporting you and wanting you to be the best writer you can be. And I think that's a lovely thing about the process. And I think that must be what is hard about self-publishing, perhaps, that you don't necessarily have that. And you are your own cheerleader, aren't you?
Yeah.
So that must be a little bit harder. Well, I know it was, because Being Miss was self-published.
So you've seen both sides of it, haven't you? Which is interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. Do you think your style has changed? I think what's really interesting is this book that you've just brought out, The Library. You said it was a book club book. Yeah, it's a great cover. And I've read the first few pages. You know how you can on Amazon. Oh, I wasn't going to say that word. And it's great. I've fallen straight in love with Tom, isn't it, your main character? The second chapter started with, is it Maggie?
Yeah.
The narrator. Does that happen all the way through the book?
Yeah, it alternates between the two key protagonists.
Yeah. So what do you think makes that a book club book? It's interesting that how the way you're defining it is. How do you think it's different from what you've done before, or your romance books?
Yeah, so my editors or my publishers call it an cross-generational uplit. But you see, if you say that, most people don't know what that means.
Uplit, I think, is quite familiar now, but cross-generational, I haven't come across that.
Yeah, so it means you've got protagonists from different age ranges, or significantly different age ranges. So Tom is 16 and Maggie's 72. So they're very different people. And so I think it's a book club read because it poses some dilemmas, and it's very character based. So I think there's a lot of things that a book club could talk about, and I think it just sort of fits in that ilk, really. And I mean, usually book club reads pose dilemmas and raise issues. So I think that's why. And it's trying to find something that generally readers understand as a label. So it's having come from rom-com, which people go, yeah, I know what rom-com is.
Sure.
You go, well, this isn't rom-com, what is it? Well, that's a very good question. It's because they very inconveniently, these characters just appeared in my head and they were so strong. I was like, but you don't deserve to be a secondary character in a rom-com. You're both really powerful. I was like, whoa, what do I do with you? So it was a couple of years ago, and they were doing National Novel Writing Month does a Camp Nano in April. And I just thought, I'm just going to write it because I need to get these people out of my head, because they take up headspace. And they're constantly buzzing around. So that way, I will write your stories, and then you're done. So I ended up writing sort of about 85,000 words, the whole shebang, planned it out, because I do love to plan out with my post-it notes, alternating chapters, and then took it to my agent. I did a thing. It's not a romantic comedy, but I did a thing. And so she was really, really good. And again, once she got over the sort of mild panic of, but you have a brand, I thought, oh no, it's not. It isn't me going off in a different direction. This is just an extra. And then she took it out on submission to find a home for it, which was really good. But they were just characters that I couldn't not write. And I think it's good because I've got quite a nice reader base now, and a lot of them are reading it and saying, oh, it's quite different, but I still enjoyed it. So I think my style is still there, but it is a different type of book. It's more.
Were you conscious of that as you were writing it? Were you conscious of it being slightly different in terms of style?
Yeah, I was.
You could feel that happening.
Yeah, it is a more serious book, but okay. I'd say it's more sort of lightly witty rather than belly laughs. It's a different. The setups are the setups aren't there for comedy value. There's much more serious themes going on, but it's still a light read that ultimately is heartwarming and leaves you the smile on your face.
And have you been asked to write book club questions?
Yes, that was really scary. that was really scary. And what was even scary was my editor didn't edit them. I was just like, well, you've made no changes to the, and she went, no, they're fine. Are they? Because I just made them up. I don't know. I am in a book club myself, so I just sort of went with the sort of things we generally discuss and ask, and thought about the characters and all. So so that's quite bizarre to think that hopefully somebody will be using those questions in a book club.
And you said there's another book, someone else has brought out a book about a library. What was the title of that? You said?
Yeah, there's quite a few. I think it's
I think I saw it on Twitter. I can't remember the title.
Yeah, there's I think it's got two different titles depending on whether it's here or in the US. By Freya Sampson, and it's either The Last Library or The Last Chance Library.
Yeah, right.
But,
I suppose in the book world, that's going to happen, isn't it?
Yeah.
Especially the library. I mean, that's a great place to set a book. So, tell us a little bit about the story of the library.
So, in short, so we've got two characters who are very, very different, and they are lonely for different reasons, and they're brought together by their local library. And Tom doesn't intend to go there, but he thinks it might be a good place if there's a romance section to maybe scout out some girls. So he thinks he might pop down there, and then that all goes horribly wrong because it's very quiet. So the librarian sort of hones in on him and asks him all these questions, and he just starts sweating and just, oh no, don't do people very much. So it becomes a nightmare situation for him. And he panics and says he's there for his mum, and inadvertently ends up taking home a whole rucksack full of romance novels, which was really not his plan at all and desperately embarrassing. And then there's Maggie, who has a small holding. She's 72, grows her own veg, enjoys martial arts, not your average 72-year-old, but lives very isolated existence. And her once a week trip on the bus to the book club at the local library is her weekly contact with people. And then the library comes under threat of closure, and they have to pull together to try and save it. And in the process, they realise a lot about each other, and they've both got sort of troubled backgrounds, and they sort of save each other as well.
That sounds really good. Really lovely story. It's great, and I love the cover as well.
I'm really proud of the cover. But
do you get much say-so on your covers? How has that worked out so far? It looks really good.
Yeah, it's fab, isn't it? And they've actually gone out to an artist to sort of redo it in the same sort of style, but to proper arty cover for the paperback. So that's really exciting. I can't wait to see that. So yeah, I've been really lucky. I think I've pretty much had some involvement in all of them to varying degrees, which is really good. And I think you need to accept that the cover is there to do a job. So it's purely a marketing tool. It's there for readers to identify that that's something similar to what I usually read, and to attract them and to make them pick it up, or that it stands out in some way.
So, I was really pleased with mine. They sent it to me and said, this is what we think we're going to do. But they said, if you've got comments or you particularly hate it, do say so. But I didn't. I loved it. I'll tell you what I loved most about it. I said earlier about the fact that that publisher said to me that Being Miss, my self-published book, would disappear down a shelf. No one would see the spine. The publishers for this put the tie that's on the front on the spine.
That's cool.
So I was thinking, yay, that one will be seen. At last, I have a book people will see. So yeah, that was really exciting. It's these little things, isn't it, Bella, that keep you going? A little tie on the spine. Yeah,
it is. I mean, that's a lovely moment when you see your cover for the first time. Although, so my last one, my summer book, Promise of Summer, when I saw that cover, I thought, well, it's my title, but that's not my book, because there was a bandstand on it. There is no bandstand in the story.
Okay.
I was like, that's really weird. But then when I spoke to my editor, she was laughing. She said, let me take you through my thought process. So when I was briefing it in, I said, right, it's based in Sheffield, and but I want it to be outdoorsy, and I'm thinking maybe a park. So they looked up and they found there was a park in Sheffield with a bandstand. So that's where it came from. But obviously when we talked about it, that wasn't really relevant. My admin assistant, aka my cat, is demanding to come in. So
I heard something.
Join us.
Yeah. Oh, hooray.
Otherwise she'll just keep making a fuss.
Yeah.
Come on.
Come on in, cat.
Shocking. I know. Come and say hello. Terribly professional. There we go. Here she is.
Hello, Puss.
There
And what do you have to say about the literary world, Kat?
Well, she's very good at filing. So when I finish with post-it notes, I throw those for her and she files them in places. Then we find them later, don't we? Which is very helpful. She likes to lie on my plans, not so helpful. I did used to use a pin board, but when I had it on the book floor next to me and she wasn't getting attention, she would go up to it and pull the pins out and spit them out and they just look at me.
Right.
So that wasn't good. And if I wasn't here, that was even worse because then I couldn't work out exactly where they'd come from and which bit went where. So so not the most helpful admin assistant I've ever had.
So is that where you are now? Is that your study? Is that where you work? Is that where you sit to do your writing?
It's a spare bedroom. It sounds posh, doesn't it? I'm in the study. It's a spare bedroom. But yes, but it's my little corner.
And are you a disciplined writer? Do you have a routine?
Yes and no. I think I do. I sort of try and do a full day at the desk, but I do a bit of social media in the morning. But I do get distracted by cats on the internet and lots of things, really. I can be easily distracted. And then sometimes I can just work and I miss meals and things. So I think it varies, doesn't it? How about you?
Yeah, I mean, I tutor as well. I tutor English. So at the moment, I'm still juggling the two things, the writing and the teaching. The teaching I'm doing to earn money because the writing, well, let's not go there.
Yeah, folks, if anybody watching, if you're thinking of doing this to make millions.
No, actually teaching won't do that for you either, but that's my job at the moment. So I left classroom teaching a couple of years ago and I'm just fully self-employed now, teaching and writing. And I was sort of hoping that gradually the writing and the teaching maybe the writing would become the thing I do most. And I think gradually, I think that is happening just with events like this and different things that I'm doing. So my tutoring happens between sort of 4 and 7 every day, every weekday. So that can be a problem if I'm needing to get to something in the evening. So I'm just beginning to get clashes now and thinking, oh, I need to cancel that tuition in order to be able to get to that event. So my days tend to be writing in the mornings and all the admin and all the watching cats on the internet and all those things that you have to fit in, and the biscuits, which we said we would mention. So I do that in the morning and then I start planning for my afternoon teaching, and then I do my afternoon teaching and then I collapse on a sofa. Sounds
good. Especially the collapsing on a sofa bit, that sounds good.
But I don't have one place in the house where I write because my husband is a flautist, a flute player.
Oh, wow.
So it depends where he's playing his flute as to how far away in the house I try to escape. So sometimes I'm in a bedroom, sometimes I'm in the front room, sometimes I'm in the back room. It just depends where I'm trying to get away from the flute. He doesn't play all day, but that's when he does play. So
that's tricky. Yeah, it's tricky. It's sort of juggling around family, and it's them understanding that you're working. I still struggle with mine. They still, because I'm here, they'll just come and talk to you and you're just in the middle of something.
I
don't know if you've seen this. There was I think it was a Netflix film, the Man Who Invented Christmas, and it was about Charles Dickens.
Oh yes,
I
did see that.
Well, I thought that was so real, how it is, where he's in a room and all his characters are there with him waiting for him to do something, and then all of a sudden things are happening, and then somebody knocks on the door and they all vanish.
Yeah.
Yes, that's what it's like.
That is a great film. The other thing I saw on TV, which was a real turning point for me in my writing, was a documentary about Ian Rankin. I don't know if you read his crime books at all. I'm not really a crime reader, but I like him as a person. He's really good on social media and he's really good on TV. Seen a lot of what he's done. And it was a documentary about Ian Rankin, and what the film crew were doing were following him for a whole year from the beginning of writing a novel to the end of the first draft. And I remember these scenes where he was showing the viewers his novel, his manuscript, covered in crossings out, post-it notes. You could see where he'd written in capitals things like didn't she have blue eyes in chapter 1? Or this can't work. That wasn't invented by then. And I found it so motivating. That was about 5 years ago. I think I was trying to work on a novel. And I found that so motivating because he has published tens of books, hasn't he?
Yeah,
if not
lots.
hundreds, I'm not sure.
Yeah.
And I thought if all of his first drafts look like that, then I'm allowed to have a messy first draft and not to worry that it's not perfect. I don't know, when you're writing, do you tend to perfect as you go along, or do you bash the story out and then go back?
I tend to keep going, and I do like doing National Novel Writing Month in November. So it's complete madness. It's writing 50,000 words in a month, which is utterly bonkers. So I feed the family fish fingers and vitamin tablets, and they survive. They hate it because it is bonkers, but it works. And I think it makes you, it shows you that you can do that ridiculous amount of words if you have to. And because you're writing every day, you're in the story all the while. So you haven't got to backtrack. You haven't got to think, what did I do last time I was here? You know your characters are in your head all the time. And I think there's a real benefit to that. So I try and do work like that, not quite so many words a day, but that process works well for me to just keep going. But then I do an awful lot of planning beforehand. So I'm a big planner. So I
you know where you're going.
Yes.
You know the ending, you know what's happening in each chapter, down to that kind of detail.
I wouldn't say, well, I did with the library because I mapped it out by chapter because it was alternating. So I had to, it had to go because both characters were in a lot of scenes together. So it had to work between whose point of view it was. So I don't generally go to that level of detail, but I do go to a lot of detail. So this is the plan for my next book.
Oh.
That's a Christmas one. So
watch and learn.
So it does, So I know the key scenes. I know a lot of it, and then as I go through that, I'll write it, and then I'll break it into chapters when I'm self-editing, and
I use Scrivener, which does that for you in a way. So we just had a message to say we have 5 minutes before we need to give room to the next speakers.
Okay.
So I think that's probably saying to us to wind up, but I don't know if you noticed that Karen says the library is on my Amazon to buy list.
Yay,
but waiting for the paperback in January. I love Uplit since Eleanor Oliphant, yes, and the Lido, yes.
It's been compared to the Lido, so that's lovely.
Yeah, we need Uplit in COVID times. Karen, I think you finished our session for us. It's a great last word. It is. Well, it's been lovely. It's been very nice to chat to you. And where can people get your books, Bella? Well, on the website that we don't mention, but one of them currently available in Tesco's and Asda, The Promise of Summer. Generally, there's independent bookshops. The Hive is a good place. Bookshop.org, I believe it is the independent one. So there's, round and about. How about yours, Fran? Mine, people can go to my website, which is www.franhill.co.uk. But my book's available in Kenilworth Books and Warwick Books, local bookshops, and in Waterstones and other bookshops. Fabulous. And be great to have some new readers. Thank you so much for being with us. Bella, that was really good fun. Thanks, everyone. Bye. Bye. Are they going to stop the recording button? Just waiting to see. This is your chance for your interpretive dance. Oh, yeah. Okay, I don't think they're going to stop the recording, so maybe we should just go. We shall just go. Thank you, everybody. Okay. Bye. Thanks a lot, Fran. Take care. Bye. Bye.